Hello and welcome to Excel Weekend Season 9 for the year 2024. Hey, I'm super excited to be part of this conference for the third consecutive years. And on behalf of Cristiano Galvao and the planning committee, I want to welcome you to Excel Weekend Season 9. And I trust you're going to enjoy yourself because we have a lot of speakers from around the world discussing amazing topics in the world of Excel, Power BI, and Fabric. So, my name is Abiola David, and I'm a Microsoft MVP. So, I'm going to be talking briefly on Power Pivot, data modeling, and the new Microsoft Fabric workloads. Start off this presentation with what is Power Pivot. It is basically a data modeling and business intelligence tool that is provided by Microsoft as an add-in for Microsoft Excel. It allows us to import data from different kind of data source, manipulate data, and analyze large volumes of data right inside Excel. And of course, we can even create DAX formulas and interactive reports. So what is Fabric Workloads? Basically, Microsoft Fabric is an all-in-one analytics platform for business and data professionals. And the workloads include the data science, data warehouse, data engineering, and some others. So I'm going to briefly touch on some of these workloads. Let's dive into the presentation. Now I'm going to come to my SQL Server Management Studio, and I want to get this data fact table, which is located in the sales data database. So I'm going to head over to Excel, and then I'm going to come to this Power Pivot worksheet, and I'm going to click on data, and under the get and transform data group, I want to get data from database and from SQL Server database. And then I'm going to provide a name for my database, which is Abiola David 01. And then I can provide a name for the database, so which is sales data, and then click OK. You can see all the tables in the sales data database. So we want to connect to this fact table, and this is the preview of the table. So click on transform data because we want to create dimension tables from the fact table. So the first thing I'm going to do is to rename this. I'm going to call it F transaction. So, and then click on enter to commit. So I'm going to right click the query and choose duplicate. So this is the duplicate. Now first I want to create a dimension table from the customer types. I'm going to right click and choose to remove all the columns, and then I'm going to right click. I want to get rid of the duplicate, so remove duplicate. And of course, I'm going to come to the add column tab under the general. We want to click on this index column. So we want to create index from 1 to 3, 4, and then I'm going to rename this and call it customer type ID, and then click enter. So this is going to be our customer type dim table. So I'm going to rename this and call it the customer type, and I click enter. So this is D, and then click enter. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and duplicate again. So I'm going to scroll to the right. Let's focus on the account managers column. So remove all the columns, and then we want to remove all the duplicates. And then in the add column, we want to create an index. So from 1 to the 14th, and then I'm going to rename this and call it account manager. And then click enter account manager ID. So I'm going to rename this and call it the account manager. Click enter to commit. And let me get rid of this space here. Okay. And then I'm going to go back to the F transaction again, and I want to duplicate. So right click, duplicate, and I'm going to scroll to the right, and let's also get the unique product category and then create a dimension table for that. Right click and choose remove other columns. Again, right click, choose remove duplicate, and I want to come to the index. I want to add index. So I'm going to just copy this, Ctrl C and double click. This is going to be Ctrl V, and this is going to be product category ID. So I'm going to come here and rename this as the product category and then click enter. And let's just do one more. Again, I'm going to right click and choose duplicate, and I'm going to scroll to the right, and let's just take the ship mode. So right click and want to remove all the columns, and we want to get rid of duplicates. Again, we want to create an index 1, 2, 3, and it's going to be ship mode ID. So I'm going to click enter and then I'm going to rename, Ctrl V. So this is going to be the ship mode, and let's click enter. Let's make it to be consistent. Enter. So you can see I actually created these 4-dimension tables, and of course we have the fact table. So what I'm going to do next is to go ahead to the home tab, and we want to close and load tool. Now, very importantly, we want to add this data to the data model and only create a connection. So check on the create connection and add this data to the data model and then click OK. There we go. So we can see under the queries and connections, we can see the data is now loaded into the Power Pivot data model. So I'm going to come to this Power Pivot window tab and then click on manage so that we can see the data in the data model. Right, so we can see the data in the data model. This is going to be the fact table, and we can see the fact table F transaction. This is going to be the dimension table for the customer type, account manager, product, ship mode. So I'm going to come to the F transaction. So what I'm going to do next is to create what is called a calendar table. So I'm going to come to the design tab and then we can see the calendars. So I'm going to click on this date table and click on new, and it's going to generate a calendar table for us automatically from the date column in the F transaction table. So we can see I'm going to expand this a little bit. So I'm going to expand so we can see the dates. So we can even transform this to a proper date data type. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the home tab and then I'm going to under the formatting, I'm going to choose the proper short date. So that's fine. So we can see the year, the month number, the month, year, and so on and so forth. Let's just go ahead. And I'm going to come to the view and click on this diagram view. And then we can see all our tables. So what I'm going to do is to create a relationship across the dimension tables and then the fact table. So let's get all of them close by and then the calendar. Okay. And now let's start creating the relationship. So I'm going to expand this. So this is going to be our fact table. So basically I want to grab the customer type from the dimension table and connect to the customer type in the fact table, and that creates a one-to-many relationship. And of course for the product category, I'm going to connect to the product category in the fact table, and then for the account manager, I'm going to connect that to the account manager menu side in the fact table. And then for the ship mode, I'm going to connect that to the ship mode in the fact table. And of course, for the calendar table, I'm going to connect days to the other dates. Okay, and that's fine. So there we go. So we can see the one-to-many relationship established across, and that is pretty fine. Let's go back to the data view. Okay, so this is going to be our calendar table. Now, so I'm going to come to the fact table and begin to write our DAX formulas in the measure grid, because I love to do that in the measure grid in the Power Pivot in Excel. So the first measure we want to write is the total sales. So I can choose any of the cell within the measure grid and come to the formula bar. So I'm going to give the name for the measures. This is going to be total sales. And then in the Power Pivot, we have to use the colon equal to, and then we can call the name of the DAX function. So I'm going to use the SUMX function, and this requires a table to iterate over. So this is going to be F transaction table, comma, and then for the expression, this is totally allowed for me to just click on the total column, and that automatically deliver the total column in the F transaction table. We can close the bracket and hit enter. And there we go. So we can see the total sales measure created. And then I can come to the home tab and choose this in English GB pound, and there we go. So we can see the total sales, which is nicely formatted, and this is cool. Now the next formula we want to write is the number of transactions. So we want to use the count rows DAX functions. I'm going to come here and I'm going to come into the formula bar. Let's call this one number of transactions, and then I'm going to use the count rows. So we want to count all the rows in the F transaction table. So click enter, and there we go. So we have 1039 records. So I can even use the separator, the comma, and this is nicely formatted. So let's just go ahead and build a report on these two measures we just created. So I'm going to come to the home tab and then I want to click on pivot table. Now I want to choose pivot table report, and of course we're going to see this create pivot table dialog box. So we can choose to put in the new worksheet or this existing worksheet. So let's go with the existing, and then for the location, I'm going to choose this cell, and I want to choose cell A3 and then click OK, and then click OK. So there we go. We can see the calendar, the D account manager, the customer type, the product category, the ship mode, and then we have the F transaction fact table, and we can even switch the settings. So I'm going to choose field sections and area sections side by side. I think this is more better for me. So when I expand this, I can scroll down and see the two DAX measure we just created, which is lovely. So let's want to just see this report. I want to see the account manager by the total sales. So when I drop this in the values, and that nicely creates the total sales report by account manager, which is super lovely. And of course, I can just tidy up this report because this is not descriptive. We should be able to see the name of the account manager's field, and because the pivot table uses what's called compact form, so we're going to transform to a tabular form. So I'm going to come to the design tab, and then under the layout I want to choose the report layout. I want to show in tabular form, and there we go. So we can see the total sales by account manager, which is super lovely. And of course I can even drag this number of transactions DAX measure that we use the count rows to create. I can drop it below here, and there we go. So we can see the number of transactions generated by each of the account manager. So I'm going to duplicate this report. I'm going to Control C, I'm going to Control V to paste here. So let's I want to get rid of the account manager from the rows area. And then we want to see the total sales by the date hierarchy. So I'm going to grab these and drop into the rows, and there we go. So we can see the date hierarchy. I can click on this to expand. We have the year, the month, and the date column. And of course, this creates a nice report for us. And of course, we can go ahead and drill into the report. Okay, so I can click on this plus sign to expand the next level of the hierarchy, which is the month. So we have the month February to December, and of course I can expand. I can even come to the analyze tab, and then we have the expand and the collapse field. I can expand all of them, and there we go. So we can see how the sales is over time. So we have the total sales for the year 2013, 14, 15, and so on, and then for the month period. And even expand further. So let's see, I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to come to the analyze tab and choose expand field, and that moves to the next level of the hierarchy, which is the individual date of transaction. So let's go back. I'm going to go back here and collapse the field, and let's collapse the field one more time. So I'm going to come here, collapse the field. So we can even write even further DAX formulas from this environment. So let's want to see the percentage of total sales. So I'm going to right click and choose add measure, and then I can give the measure a name. So I'm going to call it grand, or let's call it percentage of GT, grand total. And then I'm going to come to the formula. So I'm going to use the divide function. Now the divide function requires a numerator and the denominator. So for the numerator, since we have already calculated the total sales DAX measure, so I'm just going to feed that as the numerator. So total sales measure, we can see this f of x. This indicates that this is a established measure, explicit measure. So I'm going to press the tab key, double click, and I'm going to put in a comma. So for the denominator, I'm going to use the calculate DAX function. I'm going to press the tab key, and then for the expression, again, I'm going to call it total sales measure, double click, I'm going to put in a comma. So to modify the filter context of the calculate DAX function, I'm going to use the all function. Now the all function will return all the rows in the table we're going to specify. So I'm going to press the tab key, and then I want to specify the F transaction table, close the bracket for the all, close the bracket for the calculate, and then for the divide. And then we can specify the category, the formatting, but that's fine for now. Let's just leave this out. I'm going to click OK. Okay, so when I expand and I go down here, we can see this is already established, and then I can drop this inside the values area, and there we go. See, this creates for us the percentage. I'm going to right click, and I want to show you how to apply the percentage in the DAX formula. So click on the edit measure, and then I'm going to specify the number, and then under the number I want to come to the format and choose the percentage, and then we can specify the number of decimal places. So we want 2 decimal places, click OK, and there we go. So we can see the percentage of total, and of course I can also come back to this first pivot table report. I can set for the percentage of grand total and drop under the values, and there we go. So you can see we have been able to reuse the DAX across. We can even create pivot chart from this report. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back to the first report. I'm going to get rid of this percentage of total and the number of transactions. So we're going to have the total sales and the account manager. So I'm going to come to the insert tab under the chart group. I'm going to click on the pivot chart, and then we can see different kind of charts we can use. Let's use the clustered column chart. So this is going to be the preview, and then click OK. And there we go. So this is nice and easy. And of course, we can even apply what is called slicer. So I'm going to come to the Analyze tab and insert a slicer. So let's want to slice and dice by product category. So I'm just going to add product category and product container. So click OK. And then we have 2 slicers that we can use to slice the data. So move this here. So when I filter the furniture product category, I can see the report responds to the slice. And of course, when I filter from the product container, it responds. And I'm going to clear the filter from the slicers. And of course, we've discovered that nothing is happening to this report. So we can actually connect this second pivot table report to the first report. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the product category slicer and come to the slicer option. And then I'm going to see this report connection. So we can see it is connected to the pivot table 1. So when I place a check mark here, it's going to connect to pivot table 3. Click OK. So when I go ahead and filter for the home office, for instance, you can see this responds to the filter, and the second report also responds to the filter, which is amazing. I can do the same thing for the product container. Come to the slicer, click on report connections, and then connect the pivot table 3, click OK. So when I filter for, let's say, small park, there we go. So you can see both of them respond to the slice. So this is basically some of the stuff I have for you in the Power Pivot. In the next presentation, I'm going to focus on the Microsoft Fabric workloads. So thank you and see you moment. In Microsoft Fabric, we have different kind of workloads, which we also call experiences. We have the Power BI, the Data Factory, Data Activator, Synapse Data Engineering, Synapse Data Science, Data Warehouse, and Synapse Real-Time Analytics. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to create data pipeline in Data Factory workload. let's dive into that. Basically, a data pipeline allows us to copy, move, or transform data from a source to a destination. Let's see how to do this in the data factory. So this is Microsoft Fabric welcome page. I'm going to click on this Power BI and create a workspace. So click on my workspaces and choose new workspace. I'm just going to call it new data pipeline and then click apply. That's going to create the workspace. All right, so I'm going to switch from the Power BI experience to the data factory. Click on that. And then we can see we have the data flow gen 2, which is Power Query Online, and the data pipeline. So I'm going to click on data pipeline. And then I need to give a name for the pipeline. Let's just call it first data pipeline and then click create. Say start building your data pipeline. Now we can add pipeline activity or copy data or choose a task to start. So we just want to copy data from a source to a destination. Click on copy data. And then in the copy data dialog box, we can choose the source. Now there are so many sources here from the sample data in Parquet, CSV, JSON file, and so on and so forth. And of course, you can even connect to different sources like the Amazon RDS for SQL Server. We can connect to Amazon S3, Azure Blob Storage, and so on. Anyway, we want to connect to this data, COVID-19 data lake. So click on that and choose next. COVID-19 data file. We can see different kind of tables such as Bing COVID-19. And we can see COVID-19 tracker, European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, and of course, Oxford COVID-19 Government Response Tracker. We want to connect to this European Center for Disease Prevention and Control. And then we can choose the format either from CSV, which is 1.5 megabytes, or we can choose from the JSON line or Parquet file. We want to go with the CSV, so click on that and choose next. And then we need to choose the data destination. We can see the first is the data source, connect to the actual data source, and then choose the data destination. Now I want to actually load into a lakehouse, so I'm going to choose lakehouse and then click on next. Now we can choose to dump the data in an existing lakehouse if we have any. We can choose to create a new lakehouse. I'm going to just create a new lakehouse and just call it COVID-19 dataset and then click next. In the next page, we have the root folder. Now I can choose tables or file. So I want to go with the table. And of course, I can optionally load to a new table or an existing table. So I want to dump it in a new table. And then I can rename this default name, but this is fine. And very importantly, we can see the column mapping. So we can perform some things here. We can see these are the source columns and then the type. Now we can change some of them from string to date and some other data types. I'm just going to click on next and then we can see the step. We want to copy from this file, from this location, and then we have this is going to be the destination, the lake house, and then we can see the source and the sample data set, the destination, connection name as well as the table name. So we can choose to start data transfer immediately or maybe later, but this is fine. Just click on save and run. And then we can see gathering your new changes and start. We can see successfully running first data pipeline. And then we can see under the output at the bottom here, we can see the pipeline run ID, we can see the pipeline status, and then we can see the activity name, which is to copy data. We can see the status, the run start, the duration, the input and output. So we're just going to wait for some few seconds to see the activity status. There we go. So we can see succeeded, successfully ran the first pipeline. That's quite amazing. So we've been able to transfer the data from the source into the lake house, and then we can go back to the workspace. Here, I can come back here and double click, and there we go. We can see the pipeline that we established and the data is now in the lake house. Just click on it and then wait for the data to load. Okay, so there we go. So we can see COVID-19 underscore data set, and then we can see all the tables which is loading anyway. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to come to the workspace. We can begin to even write SQL in the SQL analytics endpoints. So when I click on that, that's going to open the SQL endpoints to write queries against the data. So we can see loading your SQL analytics endpoint metadata. And there we go. So I can click on new SQL query. So I'm going to write select star from ECDC underscore cases. I can say where country and territories equal to inside single quote Australia. All right, and then we can terminate the statement and click on run. Okay, so there we go. So this is the output of the query, and then we can see there are 350 records where the countries and territories is equal to Australia. So this is basically how we can connect from a data source and load the data into a destination using a data pipeline in Data Factory. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to fetch data from Azure Data Explorer of the Keystone Fabric workload into Microsoft Excel for analysis in the Power Pivot. Let's dive into that. Basically, this F transaction is a data that has already been ingested into the KQL database in Microsoft Fabric. How do we connect to that data? It's super simple. So I'm going to come to Excel, and then in this blank workbook, I'm going to come to the data and then click on get data, and then I want to point to the from Azure, and then I want to point to the from Azure Data Explorer. So I'm going to click on that. All right, now in the Azure Data Explorer for Keystone, we need the cluster. So I'm going to go to the KQL, the database, and then I want to point to the database here. I'm going to copy this query URI. So copy to the clipboard, go back to Excel, and then in the cluster, Control V to paste, and that's the cluster. And then I can optionally provide a name for the database. Now the name of the database is the same thing as database, and then go ahead and click OK. Now, Excel is going to require you to sign in into your organization, which I have already done. So we've been able to connect to the F transaction. Amazing. That is super awesome in Excel. Now, I'm going to click on transform data to perform some transformative task, and then we can create dimension table from the fact table and then load into the data model. Now, you can see we have the date column as the text or string data type. So I'm going to switch to date. Now, the moment I do that, you can see that we have so many nulls. Now, this is one of the problems I discovered when creating the database and table in the KQL in Fabric. Of course, I'm going to flag this later. Now, what I'm going to do is very simple. I'm just going to clear or filter out the nulls so that I can work with real data without any errors. So there we go. So we've been able to transform data, and let's transform this price and the sales to a new data type. Let's use currency, and that's awesome. So this is going to be the fact table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and duplicate. So I want to create dim tables for the product and payment type. So I'm going to grab these two columns, all right? Right click and choose remove other columns. That's cool. So again, I'm going to right click and duplicate this query. And then I want to get rid of this payment first. So remove the column. And then this is going to be the dim product. Okay, so let me just rename that. I'm going to call it dim product. Okay, click enter. And then I want to get rid of the duplicate record. So remove duplicate. Amazing. And then I'm going to come to the add column tab, and under the general, I want to create an index column. So click on this drop down and choose from one. And I'm going to come here, Control C, I'm going to come here, Control V, and just add in ID. So that's going to be product ID. Click enter. Amazing. So I'm going to come to this and do the same thing for the payment type. So right click, remove the column, and then I want to get rid of the duplicate values. So remove duplicates. Again, in add column tab, I want to choose index column from 1, and of course, I'm going to call this one payment type ID. Okay, click enter. That's cool. So let's rename this as dim payment type. Okay, all right, click enter. Okay, and let's get rid of this space. All right, so this is going to be the dim product and dim payment type, and then we have the F transaction, the fact table. That's cool. So let's come to the home tab. I want to close and load to want to load into the Power Pivot data model. So I'm going to choose from the import data wizard only create connection, and they want to add to the data model, the Power Pivot. So click OK. And then we're going to see the queries and connection tax pane with 3 queries being loaded into the data model. So let's wait. All right, so we can see 126 rows loaded in the F transaction table, and we have 6 and 8 rows in the payment type and dim products, dim tables, respectively. So that's cool. I'm going to click on this icon, the Power Pivot, and then we're going to switch to the Power Pivot, the data model, and then we can see the table, which is quite amazing. So what I'm going to do is very simple. I'm going to come to the diagram view and create many-to-one relationship from the dim tables across to the fact table. So I'm going to come here and then I'm going to grab this payment type and connect, and this is going to create a one-to-many relationship. And again, for the product, from the dim product, I'm going to connect to the product in the many side, the F transaction fact table. That's cool. So let's switch to the data view and let's just write a simple DAX formula. So I'm going to call this one total sales, then the equal to, and then we can use the name of the DAX formula or function we want to use. I'm going to use the sum x, and then for the table, we want to iterate over the F transaction table, comma, and then for the expression, we want to grab the sales column in the F transaction table, close the bracket, and we click enter on the keyboard. And then we can apply under the formatting. We want to choose the GB pound currency symbol, and then we can go ahead and create pivot table report. Now we can use the existing worksheet, click OK, and then we can go ahead and search for the total sales measure, drop in the values, and then let's want to see payment type, grab that from the dim payment type, drop in the rows, and there we go. So we can see the total sales by payment type, and then we can just fix this the pivot table design by choosing the report layout, show in tabular form, and we can see the descriptive name of the field, the payment type, and then we can see the total sales. Now let's switch back to the Power Pivot. Let's want to see the percentage of grand total. So I'm going to come to the formula bar. I'm going to call it percentage of GT for grand total. Now in this case, I'm going to use the divide DAX. Oops, we need colon equal to the divide. Now for the numerator, I'm going to call the calculated total sales DAX measure, comma, and then for the denominator, I'm going to use the calculate DAX function, and then for the expression, I'm going to call the total sales DAX measure that we created. Now to alter or to modify the filter context of the calculate, I'm going to use the all DAX function, which returns all the rows in the table or all the values in the column. So press the tab key, and then for the name of the table, I'm going to call it F transaction table, close the bracket for the all DAX function, and then for the calculate, and then for the divide DAX, and then click enter, and that's going to show 1%. Amazing. So we're going to show format this number in percentage, and there we go. So let's switch back using this switch to Excel. And then we can see the calculated DAX measure and just drag and drop in the values. And there we go. So we can see the percentage of grand total. And we can easily tell that the Visa card payment type represents 22.28% of the 100% of the total sales revenue generated. So basically, we've seen how to connect to the Azure Data Explorer of the Keystone database, and then we've been able to use that data to perform analysis in Excel. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to create data pipeline to copy data from warehouse to lakehouse workloads in Microsoft Fabric. Let's dive into that. Basically, we have this A to Z of warehouse workspace created. And then when I click on this transaction with the warehouse type, you can see all the tables within the warehouse. So we have the D account manager, D category, and so on and so forth. Now, to ingest the data into the lakehouse from the source, the warehouse, I'm going to come to the A to Z of warehouse workspace created. And then at the bottom here, I'm going to switch from the data warehouse experience to data engineering to create a new lakehouse. So I'm going to click on lakehouse and I'm going to call it demo and click on create. There we go. The demo lakehouse is now created. So we want to get data into the lakehouse by clicking on this new data pipeline. And then let's just call it sales, the name of the pipeline, and then click on create. Okay, let's call it sales data and click on create. In the copy data into lakehouse, I'm going to scroll down and point to data warehouse as the data source. So click on next. And they want to choose the particular data warehouse, which is in this case the transaction data warehouse. So click on next. Now, want to choose the table, either want to choose from the existing table from the warehouse or use query. So I want to choose at least a few of the tables. Let's grab the account manager, category, and the F transaction fact table. So you can even grab as many tables as possible if you like. And then we can see the preview of the F transaction fact table at the right side of the copy data into lakehouse window. So click on next. And then we can choose the existing or create a new lakehouse. We want to choose the demo lakehouse that we just created. So click on next. And then we can see the three tables and the root folder is pointing to tables. So we can choose tables or file. And in the load setting, we can choose to load to a new table or an existing table. So this is fine. I'm going to go with the names. So this is cool. Now the last thing we want to do is to check the column mapping for the source data types, whether it corresponds to the destination data types you want. So everything is fine thus far. Click on next. And then we can see the copy summary. You can see from data warehouse, the source connection name is transaction and the number of tables that we want to sync into the lakehouse is 3. So we can see the destination connection name is demo and the number of table to be sunk is 3. So go ahead and click on save and run. And then we're going to see the pipeline parameters. We can see the name, the type, and the value. So just go ahead and click on OK, and then wait for the activity to commence. So we can see the pipeline status is in progress, and we can see the 3 tables that I want to ingest into the lakehouse. So we're going to wait. And then when the activity turns to succeeded, that means we've been able to successfully ingest the data into the lakehouse using the data pipeline. So let's wait for some few seconds or minutes. There we go. So we can see the pipeline status succeeded and all the 3 tables are successfully ingested into the lakehouse using the data pipeline. This is super cool. So we can see the pipeline run ID, and then we can see, we can even export into a comma separated value flat file. So let's go to the A to Z of warehouse workspace we created, and then we can see the demo lakehouse. So let's investigate whether all the 3 tables are successfully in the lakehouse. And there we go. So we can see we have the F transaction and D category as well as the account managers tables successfully loaded into the lakehouse from the warehouse. So this is basically how we can perform data engineering to transfer or copy data from one source to another using the data pipeline in Microsoft Fabric. In the last presentation video, I'm going to show you how to read data from Microsoft Exchange email attachments into Fabric Lakehouse workload. Let's dive into that. The data I'm going to read spans from Sales Report 2013 to Sales Report 2016. Now, these are the data in my Exchange Outlook. So we can see 2013 to 2016. After we've been able to successfully read the data into the lakehouse, we're going to write a single query in the SQL endpoint of the lakehouse. And then I'm going to swipe to my Yahoo email address, send the sales report for the 2017 into this email. And then I'm going to go to the workspace we're going to create, refresh the data in the data flow gen 2, which is Power Query Online, go back finally to the SQL endpoint and execute the query again. And by so doing, we should see the automation taking place. In other words, the report for the 2017 will be included in the report. So without much talking, let's get started. Now, this is the Microsoft Fabric welcome page. So I'm going to go to my Outlook again. Now, these are the reports, just like I mentioned. Now, each of the mails do contain an Excel workbook attachment. Now, let's just see the content of the report 2016.excelSX. So these are all the columns. And of course, we want to aggregate all the data across 2013 to 2016. So I'm going to close this and come back to the Fabric. Now, the first thing I want to do is to create a workspace. So I can click on the Power BI Experience and then click on Workspaces and choose New Workspace. Now, I'm going to give this as data from Exchange. And I can give any name for your workspace. Click on Apply. All right, so we can see the workspace is created. Now I'm going to switch to the data engineering experience of the Microsoft Fabric and click on Lakehouse. So I'm going to call this one Sales Report and click Create. So we can go ahead and connect to the data source. So to do that, I can click on this Get Data and choose New Data Flow Gen 2. And that's going to open the Power Query Online where we can connect using different connectors. All right, so this is Data Flow 1 and this is Power Query Online, which is quite amazing. Now, it's a good practice to change the default Data Flow 1 to something meaningful. So I'm going to call this one Sales Data to be consolidated and click Enter to make the changes permanent. Now, I'm going to click on Get Data and choose Blank Query because we're going to use the exchange.content function to access the content of my email. So go ahead and click on Next. So what I'm going to do first is to rename this query. I'm going to call this Yearly Sales Report and click Enter. Now in the formula bar, I'm going to get rid of this and call the exchange.contents code. Open the bracket. Now I need to provide my email address where I want to access the emails from the attachment from. Now this is my email address. So you can see Abiola at exceljet.consult111.onmicrosoft.com. So I'm going to come here. All right, so this is my email address. Now you're going to see credentials are required to connect to the Exchange source. So just go ahead and click on Configure Connection. Okay, so we're going to see connect to data source. Now you're going to see your Exchange and the email address. Now we're going to connect to our organizational account. That's going to be the authentication kind. So just go ahead and click on Connect. Amazing. So we can see the different components of the Exchange email. Now the first thing I'm going to do is to filter out the calendar, people, task, and meeting requests. So click on the filter, uncheck all of them, check mail, and click OK. All right, amazing. Now when I click on this, I can see the different attributes, the columns in the table. Now I'm going to click on this expandable icon. Now we do not need all of the columns. We only need the folder path, subject, sender, and I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to choose as attachments. Now, in other words, when the email do contain attachments, and of course, I'm going to click on attachment itself. So go ahead and click on OK. Now we can see all the columns. So I'm going to get rid of this first. I don't need this again and remove the columns. after the right click. Now, the first thing I want to do is let's just check the particulars of the sender. Now, the email is actually coming from Abiola David, which is the name, and the address is this Yahoo email address. Now, what I'm going to do is to click on this expandable icon because we want to see the names and include some constraints or some filter on the address column. So make sure this is checked and make sure if this is checked automatically by any reason, uncheck this, okay? Click OK. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to only check the email address that equal to abiola.david01@yahoo.com. So click on the filter drop down and uncheck all of them. I'm going to check the only one we need. Click OK. So that's a way of including the constraint or the rule to only return folder that comes from or emails that comes from Abiola David. So having done that, now you can see in the folder path, now it can actually point not only to the inbox but including deleted items. Now, in other words, if we have this kind of report deleted in the delete items, it's going to be included if we do not apply filter to the folder path. So I'm going to uncheck, click on this filter button, uncheck deleted items. So it's going to be looking into the inbox only. Go ahead and click OK. Amazing. So we can say the folder path is points to the inbox. Now for the as attachments, now we're going to set another rule by ensuring that only fields that do contain attachments are included in our data integration. So I'm going to choose equal to, now I'm going to choose drop down yes, true rather. So in the case where we have false, it's going to be knocked off. So make sure it is checked to true. And that's lovely. Now we can even go ahead and specify some keyword. So I'm going to choose text filters and I can say that contains. Now for the emails, now it must contain sales report keyword. So I'm going to type in sales space report and click on OK. Okay, so having done all that, I'm going to grab all these columns, hold down the shift key to the as attachment, right click and choose remove columns because we don't need them again. All right, now when I click on this icon, I can see the different kind of attributes such as the name of the file, extension, is in line, content, type, last, and so on and so forth. Now I'm going to check this box and we only need the name, extension, and the attachment content itself. So we only check that three columns. Go ahead and click OK. We can see the data is now in binary file. So this contains 2013, 14, 15, and 16. That's lovely. Now we can even further filter down the extension to only pick .xlsx. So choose text filters and that contains, or we can say that equals to, and I'm going to choose .xlsx from the drop down. Click OK. Do not need the two columns. I'm going to hold down the shift key and click on the name, right click, and then remove columns. Amazing. So the last thing I want to do is to convert this binary file into Excel workbook, and of course I want to promote the headers. Now I'm going to come to the formula bar and use what's called table.transform columns function. So I'm going to type that here carefully. Transform columns, open the bracket. Now make sure the name is accurately typed, table.transform columns. I'm going to come here and put in a comment. I want to access the attachment content. So I'm going to open a square bracket and inside double quote, I want to point to the attachment content. Make sure it is typed the way we have it here. And I'm going to come here, put in a comma. So I'm going to actually use the H. Now the H will actually convert H of the binary file into Excel workbook. Now we're going to use the Excel.workbook function, open the bracket. Now for the first argument, we want to point to the binary. So we're going to use the underscore, which points to the binary files, and then we want to promote at the same time the headers. So I'm going to come outside here and close off the table.transform columns and click on this to commit. And then the binary files will be converted into Excel standard workbooks. So you can see we now have tables. When I click on this, I can see the name, the data itself, the item, kind, and hidden. Now I'm going to click on this expandable button. Now we are interested in, I'm going to uncheck all of them, name and data. Now the other attributes are not necessary. So I'm going to click on OK. Okay, and finally, we're going to click on this expandable icon, and then we can see all the columns. So the order date, customer name, city, account manager, product, price, unit, and sales amount. Now, again, if this is checked for any reason, use original column name as prefix, please uncheck that. Go ahead and click OK. Amazing. So we can see we have the data combined, and that's lovely. I'm going to right click on this name and remove columns, and the last thing I want to do is to assign appropriate data types. Now for this is date value. I'm going to choose date data type, and then for the text I'm going to grab the customer name, hold down the shift key, click on the product column, right click and choose change type. I'm going to choose text, so I'm going to change that to text data types, and that's lovely. And let's go to the right for the columns such as the price and sales amount. I'm going to hold down the control key and click on the sales amount, right click, and then change type. I want to choose currency data type. And for the unit, we're going to use the whole number data type. So I'm going to click on this icon and choose whole number. And those are the amazing transformative tasks that we're going to perform in this exercise. Now, the beauty part of the Power Query Online is that we can see all the steps in a diagram. So I'm going to collapse the data preview, and this is the amazing steps that we've been going through. That's quite lovely. Now let's go to the data preview and expand or maximize. Now we are done with the transformative work. We've renamed the query. So what in the past we're going to see the ability to choose the destination here, but that has been changed in the layout. So we can see so many changes coming up even as time goes on. So the destination is automatically pinpoints to layout, so we don't need to check that or choose that again. So I can go ahead and choose publish now or later. Let's go ahead and publish now. We can see the data flow staging layout, the data sets, and we can see the SQL endpoint. And for the warehouse, we can see the default data set, the warehouse, and of course we can see the sales data to be consolidated, which is the data flow gen tool. In other words, the Power Query. So if there's a need to go back to the Power Query, you're going to click on this particular name, and of course you can see this icon. This icon tells you straight away that this is Power Query Online. Now let's go ahead and see the data in the SQL endpoint where you can begin to write query against the data. So click on sales report. Amazing. So we can see the name of the schema, we can see the name of the database owner, and the name of the table is sales, yearly sales report. And then we can go ahead and of course we can even see the data set itself, which is quite amazing. Now let's just write the SQL query, just like we said. I'm going to click on new SQL query, and that's going to open the canvas for us to write our query. Now let's just do select star from let's see all the content first. So I'm going to grab this, which is allowed, and go ahead and click on run, and that's going to execute and return all the queries. Now, the thing I want to do, I'm going to just click down. Let me just move this down so that I can see what is going on. Now, we actually want to aggregate or want to see the total sales amount generated for each of the years. So we're going to see from 2013, 14, 15, and 16. So I can say select, even use the year function to extract from the order date. So I'm going to call the order date underscore order underscore date, close the brackets, and I'm going to put in a comma. Now I'm going to use the sum aggregate function, and let's check the name of the sales amount column. So sales underscore amount. Okay, and I'm going to alias, I'm going to call it total sales amount. Click enter. Now I'm going to specify where it's coming from. Now I can grab this coming from the yearly sales report. So I want to group by this year that we're going to extract. I can Control C and Control V. Now let's go ahead and order by. Now let's order by the total sales amount and let's do descending. Now that's fine. Let's go ahead and put it. So I'm going to grab this query and click on run. Amazing. So we can see the report. Actually, the name of the file in the sales report is actually 2012. So let's say it's really not 2013. So it is 2012. So I'm going to come back here. So we can see report for 2012. We can see for 2015, 2014, and 2016, which is amazing. Now I'm going to come to my Yahoo, and this is the report, sales report for 2017. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on send. I'm going to send it to my personal email address, the Abiola at exceljetconsult111.on microsoft.com, and go ahead and click on send. And let's check the exchange. So let me just refresh. We should see it. Amazing. So you can see it just dropped in. That's wonderful. Now you can see for now we do not have 2017 included in this report. Okay, we can even just okay, let's just go ahead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the workspace we created, and just like I said, this is the Power Query, and we can go ahead and click on refresh now, and then we're going to wait for the old step to incorporate the newly received sales report 2017. Now that can take some time depending on how voluminous the data is. Now you can easily just click on this icon to monitor the refresh history. So we're going to wait for some few. You can see it's going in progress. The status is in progress. So you're just going to wait for some fill in a moment, and then we should see succeeded. So we're going to wait and come back to this video. Amazing. So we can say succeeded. Now it's now been included. We can go ahead and close this and create SQL endpoint. Click on that again. And then let's see the query that we just executed. Now I'm going to scroll down here. I'm going to scroll down, and then I can see the query under the My Queries. Now that's actually stored automatically, which is quite amazing. I'm going to grab the query again and click on Run, and then we should be able to see 2017 sales report included. Now this is quite amazing because we are able to include the data by sending it to the exchange, and then we refresh the whole process in the Power Query online, and then we execute the query again, and that's it. We have 2017 report. So the total sales for 2017 is 22,462. I'm going to come to the email and check. I'm going to click on this, and let's grab the sales amount column, Control Shift down arrow key. Now in the status bar, we can see we have 23,462, which is quite amazing. So this is basically how we can use or connect to data in our Exchange email, get it to the Power Query and into the Lakehouse, write SQL against that data set, and then include a new data, refresh the whole thing, and then we see the data being included in the final report. That is all I've got for you for the Excel Weekend Season 9. I trust you enjoyed the presentation, so I want to wish you all the best and take care of yourself. Bye for now.